Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here to do some bracketology. It is Sunday afternoon around 3:15 Central Time. So I put the timestamp on that because there'll be some games we've accounted for, some games we have not, because you do a lot of watching scoreboards, other places outside the SEC this time of the year as we try to determine who gets in, who is out, and who is seated where. My goodness, Blake, it's gotten crazy. We got 9 SEC teams under consideration for the field of 68. We've got a likely 1 seed. We got Tennessee battling for a high seed somewhere. We got all kinds of craziness going on.
Yep. So we will continue to update it, obviously, as things progress into the week and SEC tournament and all that. We probably, my guess is, once the SEC tournament starts, we'll probably be doing bracketology daily. Just may not, have 30 minutes every day. We may just do kind of a quick 15-minute update each day. So, because I know you guys want to know, especially for the teams that are hovering around the bubble in the SEC, which I think now that's really only going to be about 2 because, I think Auburn sealed its spots by beating Tennessee. Of course, seeding wise, I think there's a lot to be determined, and we'll talk about it here. But yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see how some of these games and other tournaments unfold because that will certainly have an impact on everybody, not just the teams on the bubble, but seeding wise, outside of I think Alabama and maybe Tennessee. So
Okay, let's start at the top. Alabama's a 1 right now, battling with Kansas. I had said I had put Kansas as the overall number 1 seed in the tournament a couple of days ago. Joe Lunardi has said the same this morning, but it's close. Look, it was a crazy day. If you haven't checked in, it seemed like everybody on the 1 or 2 seed line yesterday lost, other than UCLA and Texas, which both moved up a little bit. But Alabama, I think, still the number 2 overall seed for the tournament. Right now, in Houston beating Memphis today, I'm going to say that Kansas, Alabama, and Houston, I don't know that I'd say locked in because I want to allow myself some room for error. But I think it's getting pretty close. Right now, you've got Purdue and UCLA battling for the 4th number 1 seed. For what it's worth, Lunardi had UCLA ahead of Purdue this morning. I do not. But in any case, Alabama, I think, maybe a better shot to be the tournament's number 1 overall seed than falling out of a 1. Is that fair to say?
yeah, I don't think there's any chance they fall out of a 1.
Yeah.
I don't think there is a single scenario where they are not a 1 seed. They can lose to Mississippi State. They can lose to Florida. I don't think it matters. They've done their work, as we always say, and Alabama's done their work, and I don't think it matters what they do in the SEC tournament. Sure, I mean, they could play for the number 1 overall seed, but falling out, there's no chance. I just don't see it.
I think that's going to be the correct take, but I always like to hedge my bets just in case. Okay, the next SEC team, I've got Tennessee on the 3 line. I've got Tennessee this morning is the last 3. The losses are starting to pile up a little bit. You've got the Ziegler absence, although you've also got Phillips and James back too, which negates that somewhat. I've got the 3s in this order. Let's see. Kansas State, Marquette, Gonzaga, Tennessee, and right behind Tennessee, I've got UConn, Indiana, Xavier. So I don't see Tennessee falling any below a 4, and I suspect with the win or 2 in Nashville, the 3 is probably where the Vols are going to land, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm kind of staying on my same thought there. If you listen to other stuff, they're a protected seed. They're not falling out of the top 4. I don't see it. I mean, I'm sure even a loss to South Carolina or Ole Miss, I still don't think that's enough to drop Tennessee to a 5 or anything like that. So, because again, it's what do you value in the regular season versus what you value in the conference tournament, and sometimes we don't know the answer to what's valued in the conference tournament, and sometimes we do, and it's very clear that not a lot is valued. So, yeah, I think Tennessee's winds up as a 3. Worst possible scenario, if they were to lose to a South Carolina or an Ole Miss, maybe they drop to the first 4. I don't mean the first 4 games. I mean the first 4 seed, that is. They're not going to Dayton. But, yeah, so I think the Vols are just fine. If they win the SEC tournament, who knows? Maybe maybe that bumps them up, but I don't really know if they're going to jump any of those teams for a 2 seed right now.
I've got Texas A&M is the last team on the 5 seed line right now.
Mm.
I have no idea whether that's right or wrong, and let me tell you the difficulty with A&M. I've got A&M as the 20th team overall, as you would have deducted from that. A&M has 2 quad 4 losses. Do you know how many quad 4 losses the 19 teams in front of them have combined?
I'm going to guess it's very low, if not 0.
You're close. It's 1. Miami's got a quad 4 loss, and I'd have to look that up and see who it is.
All right.
A&M's got 2, and that is why I'm having an issue with knowing what to do with A&M. Do I think by quality of team, A&M's a 5 seed? Yeah, I'd probably say they're probably a 4 seed.
Miami lost Florida State,
But
by the way, at home.
Okay, which is
It's got to be.
And A&M's were to Wofford and who else?
Who
cares, right?
No, hold on. Murray State.
Murray State. Okay.
Yeah.
So now A&M does not have any losses in quad 3, and it's only got one other loss that's sub quad 1, which is a quad 2 loss. A&M's obviously beaten Tennessee, Alabama, swept Missouri, beat Arkansas, and swept Auburn. So the predictives, or excuse me, the resume computers like A&M. The resume computers actually have A&M averaged out 19 overall. That's strength of, that's KPI, and that is strength of resume. So the computers, the ones that do resume, have A&M as a 5 seed. That weighs pretty heavily into what I do, because I look at what I look at and I figure maybe they're picking up on some nuances that I'm not. So I don't think it's out of line with where their computers have them. It's just, what do you do with how the Aggies have played since December? How much do you weight that? And how much do you weight the 2 horrible losses? Because those also matter. And that's where I am a little, look, I can't read minds. I don't know what the committee is going to do or not to do, but I think that's a pretty good summation of the difficulties with what you do with A&M.
All I know is they got 3 losses since December the 21st, and they're all to tournament teams as of right now. So they beat everybody else on their schedule, including Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, Auburn twice, Missouri. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if A&M's higher than people think, but it's the same argument we're going to use for another team at the end of this thing. What is going to be the value or lack thereof of the bad losses? How is that going to impact the overall resume? That will be a question asked for multiple teams in the SEC, I think.
Where did Joe Lenardi have A&M in bracketology this morning?
He had them. Let me go straight to Twitter.
It's a 6.
Because I put this out earlier. Let me see where it's at. And they are at a 7.
A 7?
Correct.
Wow.
I mean, Bracket Matrix has them as the last 6, so I don't think it's that out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, look, the KPI's got him at 16. That's a kind of a resume computer. Strength of resume has him 22. So 5 or 6 there. Take your pick. The predictors have them at 22 overall if you average BPI, KenPom, Sagarin. So they see the Aggies is a 6 seed. 3 losses in the SEC. We could go on, but you get the point.
Yeah.
Okay, next one I've got Kentucky is the last 6 seed. Now, the predictives also average them, or excuse me, the resume computers also average Kentucky at 19. The predictors average Kentucky at 20. Kentucky has swept Tennessee, beat A&M at home, won at Arkansas and Mississippi State, beat Auburn at home, and beat Michigan on a neutral floor. Of course, Kentucky went to Arkansas and won lately. Now, Kentucky has 2 quad 3 losses and a quad 4 loss, which was to South Carolina. So Kentucky's got a little bit of A&M's problem here. And I mean, 6, I think, is right there, maybe a seed line off. You might see somebody with Kentucky as a 5, although I doubt it. You might see Kentucky as a 7.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be that 2 seed that sees Kentucky as a 7. I'll tell you that. Would not want to see that. But yeah, I mean, Kentucky's problem earlier in the season was they didn't have enough good wins. Well, they got the good wins now. Um, you know, uh, obviously the home loss to Vanderbilt didn't help in terms of adding a quad. What was that? Quad 3 loss to the mix. So yeah, I mean that they have that going against them, I guess, in terms of maybe even going a little bit higher. But yeah, I think they're going to settle in around a 6 or a 7. And like we always say too, conference tournament, what does it matter? What if Kentucky makes a run and wins the SEC tournament or gets to the championship or all those scenarios? I don't know how much it really impacts them, but they've also been a team, if you think about it, injury wise, they've had some guys in and out. So yeah, I mean, I ultimately think they drop no lower than a 7. I think I'm pretty confident in that. So
Here's another interesting team, Missouri. I've got Missouri right now as a 7. That is, again, a line higher than Joe Lenardi has Missouri. But as we talked about on our live stream last night, some people brought up, hey, Missouri could be a 6. Guess what? The resume computers have Missouri as a 6 seed right now. That the predictives don't like Missouri so much. But as we've said time and time and time again, all 8 of Missouri's losses are quad 1. Missouri's got some big wins at Tennessee, Kentucky, Iowa State, Arkansas, Mississippi State at home, Illinois, neutral floor. Missouri's a lock to make the tournament. The question is just what do you do with that seeding? The other thing for Missouri is the out-of-conference schedule is at, I think, number 206 as of this morning, right in that range. And so that's another thing. If the committee's looking to ding you for something, that's a spot where the committee could choose to do it.
man, but when you look at Missouri, the fact that they do not have a bad loss anywhere, not a single loss that you would consider a bad loss, other than losing by a
I think
lot of
they're being
points
underrated. Yeah.
to Auburn or Kansas or something like that. Man, it's just we've said the 2 teams to me, I think are going to be you're going to see perhaps the widest range of reactions to whether good or bad is going to be Missouri and Arkansas to me. And I just think because when you look at their resumes, it is very interesting to see where they rank in some of the net rankings, some of the predictive numbers, all of that. Like it is fascinating to me, these 2 teams. And so I would not be surprised at all if Missouri is higher than you would think. I also would not be shocked if Missouri is about where people think they'll be, or maybe even slightly lower, if that is the value of looking at some of the, again, whether it's the predictive metrics, something like that. I don't know, but I'm just the fact that they went the entire season with a clean sheet in 2, 3, and 4. Now that could change should they play a South Carolina or Ole Miss and lose to them in the SEC, quarterfinals or something. Yeah, obviously that would change then. But as for now, they got good wins that they banked. They've banked 0 bad losses at this point. Keep knocking on wood, Missouri fans. I don't think you're going to be in that position because more than likely, my guess is you'll play Tennessee. But yeah, so I am just curious, very curious to see where Missouri ranks.
Another one that's hard to know what to do with is Arkansas. And I'm looking to make sure I've got everything up to date here. Yeah, I mean, Arkansas got dinged a little bit yesterday in the predictive computers and the resumes as well.
But
Not too
goodness,
much
the
in the
net loves
predictors.
them.
The net, they are Tennessee light. They just don't move much no matter what. Now Tennessee, I think, like I said, our joke is that Tennessee is constitutionally bound to be like within 1 or 2
They
spots
have
of number
signed a
3, no
lifetime
matter what
contract with
happens.
the
They
number 3
have
spot in the net.
they signed a Cal contract, I think.
Mm.
They just can't get out of where you are. Yeah, okay. Arkansas, I think Lenardi's got as a 9 today. That's where I've got Arkansas also. I mean, honestly, it doesn't add up to me when I look at it, but you got the Nick Smith Jr. factor. I mean, goodness gracious, you got 8 and
Yeah,
10
but
in the league. A
Chris,
lot of people have
we
harped on
say
that.
that, but I mean, they've not played well, even with him on the floor now. Like,
I'm not defending it.
no, I know. I'm pointing
Yeah,
this out. Yes,
yeah,
like
I know.
they've beaten Georgia and Florida with him. You know, so
Yeah.
yeah, and I listen.
Lost to
I'm
Kentucky
not
with him.
blaming not blaming the player, folks. Don't take it that way. not blaming the player. I'm just pointing out that at one point that was kind of something we were leaning on to where, well, they didn't play with him for some of those losses they had earlier in the season. And it's easy to go back and say, well, they would have won this. But at the same time, they played tough competition. They've had a tough stretch to finish the season. We've said that. He played a little bit against Mississippi State, a little bit against A&M, then plays against Bama, Tennessee, Kentucky. But those are all tournament teams, right? And they lost to every single one of them. And so, I mean, two of them on their home floor. And so I don't know. They are, again, like I said, them and Missouri, I think, are going to be the two most fascinating teams to me because the numbers don't support where they're at. And I've even seen there have been Arkansas fans who have replied to some of the stuff that I've tweeted, just about the rankings, just showing the rankings and stuff. And they're like, even we don't understand how we are this high in these rankings. And again, this is not a knock on Arkansas. It's just when you put the numbers together, not a lot of it makes sense on where they are. But I am really curious to see where they wind up because they could be more fascinating than Missouri just based on, that overall resume. There's not a lot that just absolutely pops at you. And I know conference record doesn't matter. We've talked about that. But if you're looking at it visually, the 8-10 aspect is not great, but they have the built in Nick Smith thing, which they can use that still, even if, like I said, they've struggled in recent games against good teams. But they're circled that put them at the top. Actually, I'm gonna put Arkansas at the top in terms of teams I'm most curious to see where they're seated on Selection Sunday.
You know what else doesn't look good? Going 2-8 on the road.
Ooh, I thought you were going to say something about Oreo barking in the
There's
background.
one team in front of them on my list. I've got Arkansas. Yeah, well, I'm glad you're hearing me at least. I've got Arkansas 35th overall. So that'd be the next to last 4 seed. There's one team in front of Arkansas with a road record that is the same or worse, and that's Maryland, which is also 2-8 on the road. Everybody else in front of them other than Maryland has got at least 3 road wins.
Arkansas fans, let us know in the comments. How you feeling? What's your thoughts on the Razorbacks seeding? What are you thinking right now? I know some of you are frustrated. Curious to know where you're at on where they should be seated. Let us know.
Here's another place where it's not bad, but maybe it's a little bit light. They've got 4 wins against teams that I think are going to the tournament as at-large teams or would get in as at-large teams if they don't win their conference. That's San Diego State, neutral floor at Kentucky, A&M and Missouri at home. A lot of these teams that are on the fringes have got a lot of wins against 9 seeds, 10 seeds, 11 seeds, bubble teams. Arkansas doesn't have that for whatever it's worth. Again, we look at it for all levels. But I think Arkansas right now is in and is probably getting in. That it could make that Auburn game interesting if we start seeing just a ton of chaos on the bubble and bid steals and things like that. But that is where Arkansas is today. I've got Auburn, the last 10 seed as of Sunday afternoon. The Tigers did themselves a big favor by beating Tennessee yesterday. The resume computers have Auburn average out as a 28, which is a 7 seed. Nobody's buying that. Auburn is 4-8 on the road. Now, here's the thing that Auburn has going for it. 1 quad 2 loss, 1 quad 3 loss, no losses against quad 4 teams, and only 3 games, period, against quad 4 teams. So sometimes things that you don't pick up just looking at it. Auburn didn't play just a lot of horrible teams. And so I think that is reflected in the computer rankings. Auburn has beaten Arkansas, Tennessee, Missouri at home, beaten Mississippi State, and beaten Northwestern on neutral floor. Auburn's got to feel a lot better about itself. I think that both Auburn and Arkansas are probably in, and the good thing is if you're both those teams, losing to whoever you lose to, whoever loses that game is not really going to kill your resume. It's going to be a quad 1 loss. So maybe Auburn and Arkansas got lucky that they're not in one of these games where they're playing a South Carolina or Georgia or somebody like that in their first game where a bad loss could potentially be fatal.
Yep, absolutely agree. It's a good matchup for both teams because you can't suffer a bad loss. And I think they're both in. I think Auburn locked up theirs against Tennessee, like we talked about with Arkansas, kind of where they're at. Yeah, I think the magic number for Auburn was 1, and that was they had to win one of those final 3 games. They beat Tennessee, and that secured the bid. But obviously, if you're Auburn, you'd love to play your way up. And look, beating an Arkansas, beating an A&M, maybe that would do that, bump you up maybe a seed line. But then again, you can also look at it and say, would you rather be in the 8-9 game, or would you rather be a 10? Maybe playing a 7 and the 2 coming up next. That's always a question too you have. So.
Okay, Mississippi State lost at Vanderbilt last night, which has made for some very interesting discussion. Okay, State, I've got as the last team in the field. 45 overall. No, last team in the field as it stands today. You're probably going to be out of the field because there might be a bid steal somewhere, or there's a chance you are. So you want to move up. Last team in the field today doesn't mean that you're going to get in. Oh, I mean, of course, everybody knows that. State, here's what we got for State. The good. State has beaten Marquette on a neutral floor, beaten TCU, Texas A&M, and Missouri at home, and beaten Arkansas on the road. That's 5 really nice wins. The bad for State, let's see, 4-6 on the road, not great there. 3 quad, 2 losses. State was 3-3 there. 5-1 in quad 3, and 8-0 in quad 4. So that's a lot of those wins have come against quad 3 and 4 competition. That's 13 wins there. But the top end wins are good. Yeah, State is the quintessential bubble team with a game coming up against Florida in the SEC tournament that I think it had best win.
Yeah, I mean, look, they got that 8-10 record. I said I wouldn't want to be sitting there if I'm them. I know everybody will say the same thing, and I don't. Sometimes I feel like our context of what we say gets lost when we say we understand some of these things are not looked at from an actual formulaic standpoint.
No.
But Chris, I know you're not going to believe this, but I guarantee you it's going to at least be seen. And when you think about that, and you look at where those 10 losses came from and where those 8 wins came from, that still factors into your conference record. Like those are 18 games that have been played. So that's kind of my point here is those are going to be looked at, maybe not in the context of the record itself, but those are 18 games that are being judged. And so I just didn't love the fact that they finished 8-10. And I just said, I think I would be a little nervous if I'm Mississippi State. And the way it's set up, that's kind of how it went. If they'd have beat Vanderbilt, I think they would have locked up a spot. Now, I don't know. I don't know if that spot's locked in just yet. And so, yes, like you said, I think they need to beat Florida just to at least stay right there where they're at now. I don't know that moves them up really, but they need to get that win to stay there. And the numbers, the net loves Florida. To me, that's the most mind-boggling one for me of all. Everybody talks about Tennessee and Arkansas. Florida's the one I just don't understand why they're in the 50s. Like I really don't get that. But there may be someone has a better answer than I do, and I don't want to get into that on this video. But yeah, for me, Mississippi State, you really need to win that Florida. You can still get in if you don't. I honestly think that's still a possibility, but you better root for everybody around you losing because if not, then I think you're setting yourselves up for disappointment. So really need to beat the Florida team, and then you don't lose anything by losing to Alabama. Here's what I think the perfect scenario for Mississippi State is this: beat Florida, lose to Alabama by less than 10 points. If that happens, you're in the tournament. There's my prediction.
I feel like we got an interesting situation going on outside my door, which parallels exactly where we're about to go. Oreo is scratching and howling to get into my office. You can probably hear it. You know who else is scratching and howling to get somewhere?
I can tell you because I've been on Twitter about 4 hours this morning, and my goodness, it's been an interesting discussion.
Yeah, we let's call this the Vanderbilt problem. And look, Vanderbilt fans are upset that their team is not in everybody's bracket based on an 11-7 conference record, which is 3 wins better than Arkansas and 3 wins better than Mississippi State, which, oh, by the way, Vanderbilt beat both those teams. So I get it. but the whole season matters. And the other thing, Blake, they don't sit here and compare teams in conferences. They compare them against the field. And
I've
when you
tried to
do
say
that,
that, but no one listens.
I know, and it's a different exercise. I get the complaint. Maybe I'm not saying there's no validity to it, but when you try to sort through things, and look, Vanderbilt has actually got a better resume average than Mississippi State does right now. So there is that. There may be some merit for putting Vanderbilt in over Mississippi State if it gets down to that. I've got Vanderbilt as number 49 on my list. I say that. I think I've got Arizona State ahead of them, and I think when I reevaluate that, I'm going to drop Arizona State behind Vanderbilt, which means that Vanderbilt, and this is probably a little optimistic. It is certainly more optimistic than the bracketologists. I think Vanderbilt's got a case is the third or fourth team off the bubble right now. Vanderbilt fans would say it's got a better case than that, but we are looking at this objectively through the eyes of how we think the committee is going to look at it. And by the way, that's got a Utah State team behind it, which is
Is Clemson in front or behind?
Clemson is behind.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm sorry, but I don't know what's going on and why Clemson would be ahead of them right now. I'm sorry. I've been looking at resumes, and this one I don't understand, Chris. I don't want to get into it because we got to, but I'm just saying that's the one I don't get why some people have Clemson ahead of them. That's all.
No, Clemson has 2 quad 4 losses, 2 quad 3 losses, and Vanderbilt's top end wins are much better than Clemson's.
Yeah, I don't get
that one. Clemson is not ahead of Vanderbilt, despite what you were maybe seeing in some places. But I've got it going this way. I've got Mississippi State 45, which would be the last team in the field if there's no bid steals. I've got Arizona State at 46, although I think I meant to go back and go over Arizona State. I think I would put Arizona State in the 50s now. So let's just go ahead and do it here. That would make Michigan 46. Michigan's playing a game with Indiana right now or tonight, which that'll have a big impact. Penn State, I had 1 spot ahead of Vanderbilt. Well, Penn State beat Maryland today. That's bad if you're Vanderbilt. So Penn State is going to move up, put some distance between itself and Vanderbilt. And then right behind Vandy, I've got Utah State, North Carolina, Oklahoma State, and Oregon in that order. Again, that might need a little bit of going over, but it's pretty up to date. Utah State, I just frankly don't know what to do with for reasons I'm probably not going to get into for not wanting to bore the audience here. But in any case, Vanderbilt. We talked about the conference record. The big wins are there. Tennessee at home, Kentucky on the road, Arkansas at home, Auburn at home, Pitt at home, Mississippi State at home. That's 6 really nice wins, including 2 against top 6 seeds probably, if that's where you put Kentucky. The problem, Vanderbilt's got a quad 4 loss. Vanderbilt's got 2 quad 3 losses, although one of those is to Southern Miss, which could move into quad 2. Which might help Vanderbilt a little bit. But look, the Georgia game, I don't think is going to make a difference. Georgia or LSU, whoever wins that game. I mean, if Vanderbilt loses that game, it's probably over with for Vandy. And beat Kentucky, and I think you might be able to put Vanderbilt in. But look, here's the case, guys. Watch these places. Watch the Big Ten where you've got Rutgers, Wisconsin, Michigan, Penn State. Those teams are going to be battling with Vanderbilt if Vanderbilt can do some damage in Nashville. You got Utah State, which I don't know what to do with. You got Nevada in there too, near the bottom of the N, but on the bubble. So watch the Mountain West, watch the Big Ten, and maybe the ACC if Clemson rips off a winning streak. Maybe North Carolina State if NC State takes a little bit of a tumble. I think that resume, when you look at it, not phenomenal. I mean, NC State's only wins against teams that are going to be in the tournament are Miami and Duke, presuming North Carolina doesn't make it. And I know you got North Carolina, which had its 4,000th chance at a win of significance last night and didn't get it in losing at Duke. Although North Carolina's resume, if you go beyond the quads, it has beaten Virginia at home, which is a quad 2 win, but it wouldn't be hard to make that a quad 1. Beaten NC State, beaten Michigan on a neutral floor. Also got wins over Clemson and Charlotte. I've got Vanderbilt ahead of UNC right now. But anyway, if you are a Vanderbilt fan, you're watching the Big Ten closely, you're watching the Mountain West, and you're watching the ACC. Because frankly, Blake, it doesn't matter where we've got them right now. There's so much basketball to be played for all these teams, and especially Big Ten teams that have big games on Saturday. If Michigan, Penn State's already won. If Michigan does it too, they're going to put a little distance between themselves and Vandy, and that's going to be an issue for the Commodores to overcome.
Yeah, a couple of things quickly, and we'll wrap up. Southern Miss, honestly, sort of screwed Vandy a little bit because, of course, they got beat in the quarterfinals of the Sun Belt, so they're done. So that was not
That'll stick
ideal.
as a quad 3 then, probably.
Yeah, because they lost to South Alabama, who's an 8 seed. So yeah, that was not good because I think if they won the Sun Belt, then that helps a little bit. That it gives you a little bit of a boost, but that will not now. You know, it honestly doesn't matter what Grambling does because that's just a loss you shouldn't have. And so again, those are the things that are sticking there. The what if game, if you really want to play that, what if they beat LSU? You know, it's like
all that is bad loss avoidance.
it's
Same
bad
with
loss
Georgia.
avoidance. That's all it is. And that's kind of one of the points I've tried to make. Like it honestly, it doesn't help, you know, that they lost the game, of course, but it probably would not have boosted them enough to be in the tournament right now, even if they had won that game. So you're working from behind still a little bit more just because you have that extra loss. So yeah, I mean that's it for me. I think I have actually come around to the belief that if they beat Georgia or LSU and beat Kentucky, that they will get in. Because I've seen a lot of people try to just use the net ranking, and I don't know why we're not getting this through sometimes, but just
the net in itself does
oh,
not matter. It's used to group teams. Yes.
the
Sorry.
net is one part of the equation. It is not the selection process. Like they are not using the net to seed teams and decide this is it. We put that out there. I put that out there. I'm going to put this on Chris, but like it has to be shared because it is information that is used. It is a piece of the puzzle that is used. It is not the entire puzzle. You're not putting a tournament together just based on the net. I don't know how many times we have to repeat that. But I have heard people kind of go the route of saying Vanderbilt cannot get in because they are having 82 in the net. That is simply untrue because if we cannot forget Rutgers got in last year with a 77 net. If Vanderbilt beats Georgia or LSU and beats Kentucky, they're moving into the mid 70s. I can guarantee you that. Okay. I'm telling you, that's going to happen probably. They will be in the 70s. Maybe it's 79, but they will get into the 70s if those two things happen. St. John's got in 2019 as a 73. Wichita State got in as a 72. Michigan State got in as a 70. So they're 5 spots off of that, off of the highest to ever make it, and that was last year. So I don't think we can just use that. The reason they would not get in was because they had some bad losses that they should have avoided. That will be the reason, and because they have 13 total losses at the moment. Is that right? So like they're going to have 14 losses going into the NCAA tournament unless they win the SEC tournament, which by virtue they will be a lock to make the NCAA tournament. So all those things matter. But yet I have changed my tune a little bit because I do think when you look at the teams around them, I pointed out Clemson. I think you can absolutely compare their resume and feel good that it stacks up in a lot of areas. It's just, as always, bad losses stand out when you get to this point and you're on the bubble, needing help and basically needing to earn your way in. They just stand out like a sore thumb. And that is unfortunately the spot that Vanderbilt is in right now. No, even though they look like one of the best teams, one of the best 68 teams out there, right? If we were just fielding a tournament that way, they'd be in today. Eye test, Vanderbilt's in the top 4 in the eye test in the SEC for me. So, but we can't field the team. The tournament isn't fielded that way. And just for the people who think again that Vanderbilt maybe doesn't have a shot, it's funny. It's used in a reply to me today, and I said we need to trademark this phrase. We got to have 68 teams. The tournament has to be played with 68 teams. So if you want to tell me Vanderbilt doesn't deserve to be in, give me another team that does, because that's what it comes down to. There has to be a tournament fielded with 68 basketball teams. And so the bubble, no matter what anyone will ever tell you, is never really that impressive. The bubble is always the bubble for a reason. You've got a lot of things you can pick apart. You can pick apart a lot of things with Vanderbilt. But I do think that you cannot just discount and say they're not a factor because of this, because of that, because they got a couple bad losses, because they got a net ranking. They have played their way to be in consideration. And again, I will go out on the limb and say that I think if they beat Georgia or LSU and beat Kentucky, which that's a lot of what ifs, I think they will make the NCAA tournament and surprise people maybe in doing so. There you go.
Yeah, to pick off where you go there, that's what I was going to say. I think that if they get those 2 wins, they get in. I think that if they don't get both those, and here's the other thing, here's the other reason I say they get in, I think under that circumstance, their other game would be against either Auburn, Arkansas, or A&M if they were to beat Kentucky. So they're not going to take on a bad loss if they get that far.
Okay.
That is one scenario in which they get in. Maybe if there's no bid steals, if they don't do that, and Arizona State, Michigan, Penn State, Utah State, North Carolina, Oklahoma, if those teams all take bad losses in the tournament and Wisconsin and Rutgers do it, maybe. But, I mean, that's a lot of ifs. So I don't think their chances are very good without 2 more wins. I think once they get 2, it's going to be hard to keep them out. The other little footnote for them, Blake, is the Robbins thing, the Liam Robbins injury. He's
don't
done
get me
for the
started on this.
Well,
I've had this discussion on Twitter, okay? And look, I appreciate, and I've had this with multiple people, and these are good people that I have good, productive basketball conversations with. But my stance is we can say that's going to be taken into account. Of course it is, but they just beat Kentucky and Mississippi State without him. So I don't think that's going to be as big of a factor as people believe at this point. I think you have to keep that in the context. They just beat Kentucky on the road, which is one of the best wins probably for any bubble team out there right now. It's a really good win. I'm not saying any bubble team, just mean maybe the teams around them. So I don't know that that's a huge thing because, hey, they just beat those 2 teams without them. The problem is they beat those 2 teams by 5 points or less. Chris, come on, you got to win by 10 or more. Or it doesn't matter. So, oh my goodness,
yeah,
efficiency numbers. You got to get those efficiency numbers
you
up.
brought up my point with Robbins.
Sorry, I just
hats off to Vandy though. Do you remember when we were having? I know we have these conversations privately. Remember about 2 or 3 weeks ago when we thought we had space aliens? Like 3 weeks ago, it was more likely we had space aliens invading us than it was Vandy was going to be on the bubble. But here we are.
Yeah, I think they've earned consideration, and I think
they've done a great job.
Way closer than people will give them credit for. Not everybody, but I think if you really dive into the numbers, I can certainly now understand why the argument should be made that they should be ahead of Team A, Team B, Team C. Because the blind resume tests are going out on Twitter right now. And when you compare their resume to teams like Clemson, even a Rutgers, which I don't want to get in the debate of this versus that, but I think there's absolutely some comparisons to be made. So,
yeah, one problem is the more I look at Penn State and Michigan, those 2 teams also have a lot of really nice wins, which is the strength of Vanderbilt's resume. And Penn State does not have a quad 4 loss. Michigan's got 1. Penn State's got 1 quad 3 loss, and Michigan's got none. So it could be that old. The quad 3 and 4 losses may be the separator there. And I'm really afraid that eventually is what's going to break them. Because frankly, if they had beaten Grambling and they'd gotten one of those 2 quad 3s, LSU or Southern Miss, I think at this point, if they get 2 of those games, they're probably in.
Yep. But as we always say, bad losses matter, and that is why they are where they are at this very point, trying to play their way in. So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. So there you have it. Bracketology.
All right, we're going to try to follow this along with the gazillion other things we're following.
We will.
I hear they're still playing baseball this weekend. I've not paid a lot of attention to it.
Big week for us. We're going to have it all covered.
Big week.
This is our Super Bowl week right here. We're going to go hard for you guys. We're going to really knock this thing out. We got awards coming. About to do some awards. Excited about those.
We will be on press row at the SEC tournament. So if you're there and you see us, yell out, "Nice job, ref," and we'll try to Try to look your way.
Good job, ref.
That's like oh, good job, ref. Okay, that's our
job, ref.
secret verbal handshake.
GJR. That's a lot.
Right.
Don't say that. I don't even know.
That could be something bad.
That's a tongue twister.
That's all we need. All right. Are we done rambling?
Yeah. Let's get to awards.
All right.
Not in this video, though. Teaser.
Award coming next. Best way to get that, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button if you like what we do here. Appreciate you watching. He's Blake Lovell. I'm Chris Lee. We're Southeastern 14. We'll see you soon.